The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it. Weekend editions here. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kraynak, Elijah Herbel. We are back at it just from a few hours ago with Real Red Reaction. Score stayed the same. Believe it or not, Nebraska able to hang on against Rutgers 14-13, and a lot of lipstick, and that's okay if you're a Nebraska fan this morning, because you are in fake first place. Great column by Brandon Vogel from Hail Varsity. We'll talk with Vogues in about an hour. We'll also spend time with the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp. Our rewind this morning will feature Mickey Joseph and a couple of select players. We'll patch that together for you. But you can join us this morning if you're up and about. Make it a coffee run at 402-466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Artez Craig chimes in to get us kicked off and going this morning. Artez, loyal listener. He's a over-the-road trucker. We love him for taking care of our country. Morning, fellas. Nice win last night. Going to have to get that run game going next week. Oh, you are preaching, Artez. But, Mark, you watched last night. Elijah and I were arm in arm sweating that out as we were walking out of Hail Varsity Club. I'm like, that was – we watch, we cover – we analyze, we have fun, and have some opinions on. But that thing got stressful just because of the momentum and positive vibes, and just where you went from the feeling around the fan base to what the feeling was going to be. Not that last Saturday was all for naught, but you wanted to see these guys stack some things, i.e. wins, because I don't know, it had been over 1,400 days and change since you've had back-to-back Big Ten wins, and Rutgers and Indiana aren't great. That's fine. Nebraska's not great right now, but man, if you're a Husker fan, it 2-1 in league is so good compared to the alternative.
Well, you know what you have when you have two wins in a row, right?
The streak.
That's a winning streak. Right? That is exactly what is needed right now. Getting some echo in my ear, Elijah. I don't know if you can cut that. I think you just did. Wow, that was amazing. Like, as soon as I said that, it's gone. Things have emerged, though, I think, with this team that while you should absolutely be excited for two consecutive wins, just a few things to watch. The run game really has disappeared. It's like 200 combined yards the last two games. Now, it does seem like I wouldn't say it's totally inept, but it's not pretty, and it's not super. I don't think Anthony Grant's had to run longer than 7 yards or something like that.
7 yards last night. Yant 10 yards. That was it.
So the run game it's bottled up right now, and that's against Indiana and Rutgers. Now Rutgers, a decent defense, right? Like, honestly, they're a decent
18th
defense.
nationally scoring defense. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to, you take that for what it is. But one of the good trends that has emerged is second half overall complementary football. Nebraska's time of possession in the second half last 2 weeks. I think the Oklahoma game's an aberration. Maybe, hopefully, to some degree. That there is a little bit of hope in there. But time of possession second half, I mean, it's like 18 minutes to 12 minutes on average last couple games, right around there. That's dominating the time of possession in the second half. that is also being smart enough to know, hey, we shouldn't chuck it every time. That's also the defense getting off the field. The defense has given up 5 first downs on third down, 5 total, last 2 games. Like, dude, that is some sorcery stuff they have going on defense right now with third down conversion rate.
And to add to that, since Bill Busch has been appointed as interim defensive coordinator, the defense has not allowed a second half point.
Right.
And Artez just chimed in on Facebook. You're saying really impressed with the adjustments. And that defense, I don't want to say like night and day, because that defense started to look a little bit better towards the end of that second quarter in terms of slowing down Rutgers, but 0 points in the second half in each game from this Bill Busch-led defense. That's been the story to me, is the defense went from the liability to looking more like last year's defense, a defense that is carrying the offense at times.
Yeah, it's right. So you pitched a shutout in the second half the last 2 games. You've only allowed a total of 5 third down conversions in 2 games. And that's like, it's something like 5 of 29 or something. It's really, really impressive stuff that the defense has done. Granted, against an Indiana team that does not have its 2 top wide receivers. Granted, against a Rutgers team who's offensively challenged. But you're doing what you should do to teams like that if you're a good defense. And you don't want to sit here and call them the 85 Bears, of course. You don't even want to call them the 09 Huskers or the 2012 Huskers. But you're seeing signs that they're not the 2017 Huskers. They're not the 2007 Huskers. Like, you're seeing signs of life there defensively and things that you can build on.
Hail Varsity Weekend here, presented by Currency. Recapping Nebraska's win over Rutgers on the road, 14-13, 2-1 in Big Ten play. You know, it's fascinating to watch this season, and I was concerned with a lot of things last night. I thought Nebraska's offense would be better. I thought Nebraska's defense would have a chance to be pretty good just because of how off and inept Rutgers. I mean, the Rutgers could not throw the football. Think about it. I mean, 3 interceptions. Yeah. Vedral's thumb is still in ice right now. So they were very one-dimensional and still got downhill a little bit. I mean, some big plays, but Nebraska was able to adjust. It turned out that your off hand was the storyline last night. I mean, Rutgers' offense in that first quarter, big, right? The first drive and some big plays in the air really got Rutgers going. And then Nebraska's defense, that's the weaker part of the phase of the team, at least going into this. Statistically, they were the thing. They were the unit that carried Nebraska because the offense was so just inconsistent. And we were touching on this before we ended last night, Kraynak, and I want to get your take. Where can this offensive line go? What are they? What can they become? Because they need to be able to run the football next week to keep this time of possession going. I think they can get some big plays, right? I don't know that Purdue's D is Rutgers D. So what's a reality here? And I know it's going to be game to game in the Big Ten. That's how it is. There's going to be peaks and valleys in the Big Ten. But that's what I need to know. Like, trying to figure out this team, trying to project. You're happy for them at 2-1, but moving forward, can they do anything to be better in the run game? You've got a special back in Grant that, God, he is so physical. He's a winner. He's hungry, and he's just tough. But can Nebraska help themselves out by being able to block and being able to protect? And it's not like it was a sack fest last night, but Casey Thompson's, I mean, he's wearing a flak jacket. I mean, he's just getting the hell beat out of him. Yeah. And that you can't live in that neighborhood moving forward, and it's not going to get easier. I mean, November's November. Illinois looms, Minnesota looms, Michigan looms, Iowa, Wisconsin. And, of course, Purdue next weekend on the road. They've got to figure it out in a hurry. And I don't know with what they have if they'll be able to figure it out to the tune of bowl eligibility. You hope for them if you're a Nebraska fan for sure, but, man, it's just – it's going to be very problematic moving forward based on what we saw last night.
Well, let's listen to the statistics for the last 2 games. Actually, the last 3, really, since Mickey took over. Like, for all the good that has happened since Mickey has taken over, the run game has fallen off a cliff. Like, it just has, right? It's not a criticism. It's numbers. It's black and white here. So against Indiana, 51 carries, 115 yards, 2.25 per. Now, that's also not sack adjusted. Let's keep that in mind. There's about 45 yards.
But you're still not going for 7.1. You're not going for 6. You're not going for 5 a carry.
You're 2.25. And then against Rutgers last night, 29 totes for 72 yards. 2.48, dude. I mean, that's bad, right? Like, those are bad. That's 2017 Riley stuff right there, right? Like, you are not moving the ball at all. So what do? Look, you went back to your starting offensive line last night. Nebraska found something in the second half of that Indiana game where they actually were running the ball fairly well, and that could have been a corrosive effect. It could have been a cumulative effect from just trying to run the ball more and more. But I think you should look at some of the players that were on the field for that. So that was when Brant Banks was in, for instance, after Turner Corcoran got ejected. They shifted some things around. You were different at right tackle too, with Benner getting sat. Not saying it's those two guys.
Hunter Anthony came in, did all right. Yeah.
Right. Your second half of Indiana looked okay. I think you got to keep looking at it because, right, it's now you do also want to, and Mickey Joseph gave credit to him too, and this is true. It's Rutgers, but it's also Schiano, and he did have that thing rolling at one point, and he based it on defense. He's a defensive guy, so part of that could have been schematics last night too. It's grain of salt to some degree, but 2 games in a row, not even 3 yards a carry. Not good. Not good. You got to figure something out there because you're right. Once you get to Iowa, once you get to Wisconsin, once you get to, the murder, Michigan. Oh, God. I don't even want to talk about that right now. All the good juju is going away once you hit Ann Arbor.
I'll say let's worry about that when we get there because this is a Nebraska football team that has been, objectively speaking, bad at winning football games for the past couple seasons, and they have found a way to go win 2 football games. And I know you can sit back and go, it's Indiana, it's Rutgers. You can say that, but the simple fact of the matter is over the past 4 years, Nebraska hasn't been beating the likes of Indiana and Rutgers. So while it wasn't pretty, while it might raise some red flags for what's to come later this season, yeah, sure, maybe Nebraska's not going to go win the Big Ten West based on what we've seen the past 2 weeks. I think we can at least sit back and say, man, at least this Husker football team is figuring out how to win a football game. That's the simple fact of the matter. Big takeaway for me is this Husker football team is learning how to win football games. And you know what? If they end up going 5-7 this season, it's okay because 2 weeks ago I would have said 2-10. And if they can't hang with the likes of Iowa and Wisconsin along the lines of scrimmage, so be it. I mean, 2 weeks ago I wouldn't have expected it either. But 2 weeks ago I also didn't expect that Nebraska would go 2-0 against Indiana and Rutgers. They went and did it. They did what they had to do. They're learning how to win football games, and it's slowly shifting the mentality within that locker room of being a team that's willing to go out on a football field and fight.
And they're showing such awareness to Mickey in particular and the people that Mickey's surrounded himself with that he's listening to. Man, it was so refreshing just to watch some awareness of what the heck's happening with the clock, right? Honestly, that has been sorely lacking. Do you remember how often it would be, a few minutes left in the game, maybe Nebraska's up by 6 or whatever, and they're snapping the ball with 20 seconds left on the play clock instead of milking the thing?
I said this.
You're just like, what is happening?
I said this to Schmidt on the drive home last night. Nebraska, on that final drive, burned 5 minutes off the clock and only 9 plays. Something you would never see over the past 4 years. In 9 plays, they got themselves, 2 first downs and burned 5 minutes off the clock.
Yeah. It's like that's the game. That's winning versus not winning. It's right. It may seem cheap or like that's not aggressive. Like it's a W.
I mean, Mickey Joseph went out there and straight up and over that final 6 minutes of the game, outcoached Greg Schiano. Greg Schiano used 2 timeouts on third down. I'm surprised he's not receiving more jabs than he is right now because his game management late was bad, and Mickey Joseph went out there and game management wise outcoached Greg Schiano.
Yeah. Well, no, Schiano's getting punched in the face by many of the folks who cover Rutgers. The main beat writer that our friend Tom Chattel is close with. He kind of got into that yesterday, just the mood and feel in Rutgers. And, yeah, you had a stupid, silly timeout burnt, that final timeout burnt by Rutgers because there was personnel issues. And then how did Nebraska got 3 penalties last night due to 3 first downs due to penalty last night. And think how big it was for Oliver Martin to get spiked on the sideline. It's 3rd down and 15 or whatever. Nebraska throws a 4-yard out. It's 4th down. It's time to punt. You're like, oh, God. Rutgers gets the ball back for one more hurrah. And bang, Oliver gets spiked down on the sideline. And there's a 15-yard penalty. First down, Nebraska. Keep on churning clock. So Artez chimes in here, and he asks a question here, and the off pitch, right? You got your fastball, your changeup, your curve. The curveball being Logan Smothers, and Elijah and I were looking at each other last night and talking here at halftime. Casey's getting whacked. He had Purdy come in, and I'm like, all right, what's the Logan Smothers status? Because you can put him in this Whipple-controlled passing game when there's some play action and you're moving the pocket and you're dumping off to Brewington, on the underneath. 3-yard tight end dump off turns into an 8-yard gain, right? Just because of the cushion. Or the crossing routes, or even the hitch routes. I mean, Nebraska they went to those in the second half with the passing game because it had to be snap it and get it out of your hands quickly. But, I mean, I would like to see some Smothers with the running quarterback element. And Casey had a gutsy scramble to go get a first down that final drive. It was a 2nd down and 9 that he scrambled, or it might have even been a 3rd down he scrambled for on a first down. But no, I mean, I'm good with Artez's question here, changing it up a bit, help the running game out. We talk about getting this running game going. The diversity part would be welcome, where you have the quarterback run game that is a threat, along with what you have from Grant. Is that something Nebraska's got to look at here, or at least package it?
Yeah, well, either Chubba or Logan could do that. Casey can do it to a degree, but I think you want to protect him a little bit considering the shots he's taken in pass protection.
Right.
I think maybe the hesitation that's happened is we've seen it a few times outside of the second half, or outside of the Iowa game that Logan Smothers started and played the whole game, where he did a really good job running the ball. They featured him doing it. Mm-hmm. When he's come in off the bench, there have been at least 2 times that I can recall where he puts the ball on the turf after running it, right? So there's probably some ball security concerns there. That might be why he's 3rd. I'm guessing here. I don't know this for sure, but kind of put 2 and 2 together. And maybe that's why Chubba is favored over Logan Smothers when you're like, well, if this guy's a better running quarterback, but he puts the ball on the ground, it sort of negates his strength. That could be part of it, right?
And sorry, Mark, I don't want to cut you off here if you had more to say, but I mean, spot duty is more like how I want to see. I don't want to see Logan Smothers come in and get 3 plays, but whenever it's 4th down and 1 and you're sitting there going, hey, maybe we should go empty here. How about you think about running a read option with either Anthony Grant or Jock Yant and Logan Smothers. I mean, you're going to be bringing something to the element that this Rutgers team has seen very little of all season long. They're not going to be ready for that based on probably what they did in their week of game prep, and they're going to see Logan Smothers come in. They're going to go, okay, alarm bells going off, and it gives the defense something to think about on 4th and 1 whenever you can't be thinking on defense. On a 4th and 1 play, you're reading, you're reacting, and you got to play fast because you only got 1 yard that you have a cushion, I guess I should say. So, I mean, to get to that 4th and 1 real fast, Nebraska's whole plan, it looked like, was to have a running back in, quote unquote, even though there's no running back on the field, and try to get an advantageous matchup, shift him outside, and then hopefully you've got a speedy wide receiver against a linebacker. But Rutgers changed personnel in that 4th and 1. They had a good plan in place for what Nebraska was going to do, and I look back on that and I go, how hard is it to get 1 yard if you have 2 running options in the backfield? You're going to go read option. You can either hand it off to the running back up the middle, or a guy like Logan Smothers can pull it and take it around the edge. That's more where I see it. Can we get it in spot duty where the defense is going to go, okay, what's going on? The alarm bells are going off, and instead of being able to read and react, they now have to think. That's the time when I want to see a guy like Logan Smothers come into this football game.
But that's the thing, Elijah. I hear you in theory, but in spot duty, Smothers has put the ball on the ground twice. Right? Like when he started against Iowa, you didn't see it as much. But in spot, he's done that. And I just wonder too about, well, there's a couple things there. So another thing there is while it's really healthy for all of us to be able to question that, like, what the hell are you doing on 4th and 1? What is Whipple doing? Why are you going empty? And 95% of us are like, why are you going empty? It was also refreshing to hear Mickey Joseph in the postgame say, I'm not going to intervene there. Mm-hmm. During the game is the sense I got from him. I wouldn't doubt if this morning.
There's a chat this morning.
If Joseph is like, hey, Whip, why are we going empty on 4th and 1? Well, just explain that to me. Can we maybe not do that next time?
In theory.
Whip's going to show him the stat sheet, and it says 2.5.
in theory, you think Rutgers is going to beef up on a 4th and 1. They're going to send an extra defensive lineman in there. But Nebraska's personnel, I think, keyed them to the fact that Nebraska's not going to be running that football. 1 tight end in the game and 0 running backs. I think Rutgers saw that and went, okay, let's throw our nickel out there. And they had a nickel in that could go cover, I think it was Marcus Washington, who lined up in the backfield first, shifted out to the left, and then went and ran just a little curl route on the left side. And it seemed like Rutgers keyed into the fact that Nebraska had no interest running the football, and they almost went small on a 4th and 1. I think Mark Whipple was trying to get a little cute and say, hey, the defense is going to be expecting to run up the gut on 4th and 1, so let's go empty here and see if we can catch them. And it didn't quite work. That's what I saw. I had to go watch the highlights last night to make sure I wasn't crazy watching that in real time, because I was at the time frustrated with Schmidt. We were sitting at the Hale Varsity Club going, what the hell was that? Why are we going empty on 4th and 1? And I had to go back in and look at the film. That's what it looked like to me, was Mark Whipple trying to catch a defense, expecting something, and going something completely else. And Rutgers came prepared. They had that nickel in there. He was good in coverage, whoever they brought in. But, I mean, it's a lot easier, I guess, to look back and criticize these things and say, you know what, it's not a big deal when the Huskers get a win.
It's nice too about what we're criticizing here, rather than criticizing
critiquing a win.
Well, right, and nobody's sitting here critiquing the last 3 minutes of clock management, which a lot of times we have been doing on this show, where you're just like, no, seriously, what are they doing? Like, how can you be paid that much and make those decisions? We're not talking about that, dude. We're talking about one series much earlier in the game, not entirely crunch time. That's good. It's good that we're there's plenty to critique with Nebraska football overall. It is just nice to not have to question how they manage games to get wins. And that sounds so basic, but it is so important, and that has absolutely killed Nebraska over the past several years.
It's Mark Kraynak, Chris Schmidt, and Elijah Herbel. Hail Varsity Weekend. We're presented by Currency. We'll hear from Mickey Joseph and a couple of players here. The post game from last night. Nebraska hangs on. Nebraska has belief. They have momentum. They have some grit. They're able to fight and come from behind. Not play their best. Win ugly, and keep on keeping on. some things that we're curious about moving forward. And I don't know if you've seen or heard much, Kraynak, but moving forward, your heartbeat defensively has been Luke Reimer. Do we know his status? Is it a growing deal? Is it is he dinged? I mean, what's
Mickey said during postgame last night that Luke had to go back and get x-rays during the second half, and he didn't know anything else, and I don't think there's been any other official update on Luke.
Do we know what region? I mean, foot or hand? Or
no updates
idea.
on that. Mickey did say that Quentin Newsome had a lingering groin issue. That's what kept him out of the second half, and did not sound like it was going to be a serious issue for Quentin Newsome, but couldn't go last night because of a groin issue. Vogelek with the ankle, no update on him yet either, and
he
no
was in
update
he was
on
in.
Reimer.
Yeah, Vogelek able to air quote walk it off.
Right.
He was big. He was big on that touchdown. He was big on that third down conversion to keep clock burning. And Anthony Grant ice tubbing. And has that guy woke up yet on the sideline from Rutgers?
I mean, but can we talk about the like that breathed a little life? I mean, first drive.
Oh yeah, it was some
first
energy.
Drive in the
Wasn't it?
second half for Nebraska, and Anthony Grant goes and does that. There was a noticeable change, and it's hard to say when you're coming out of halftime whether that change came because the team got sorted during halftime, or if it's because of an explosive play like Anthony Grant going and murdering a dude on the sideline. Unsure, but it did really seem to breathe a lot of life into that team. Just Anthony Grant going and doing that. That was, whew. And you have people on Twitter saying, "Oh, it's targeting." It's not targeting. Anthony Grant just went and made a football play, and does that kind of look like an NFL guy running behind a terrible offensive line? That's what it looks like to me.
Anthony Grant's like, I don't want to go to Detroit. Oh, wait a minute. I'm in Nebraska. You have this, and a good column last night by Brandon Vogel, also our friend Mitch Sherman. And listen, Nebraska had a chance to go away. Nebraska had a chance to tap out, right? And then we're waiting on this season to go sideways because of everything that it's been. And that's been change, that's been injury, that's been lack of I mean, all these things. Think about this, Kraynak. I mean, a month ago we're in Ireland. And the world's, it's going to go two forks in the road. One road's going to take you to 3-9 or worse and awful football. The other road's going to take you to a competitive season, guys that'll keep fighting, and a coaching staff that's going to be there for the kids and do a good job, do a competent job. And right now with Mickey, I mean, he's got it going. He has got it going. The voice for Mickey's going to get louder and louder, especially if a week from today they pull off what looks very, very difficult to go win on the road at Purdue. So we'll take a quick time out. Keep watching and hanging out. Hail Varsity Radio Weekend is streaming for you. And you can watch us on ESPN Lincoln's Facebook and Twitter. Hail Varsity Radio's Twitter feed as well, at HVarsity Radio. My Twitter, at Schmidt_radio. Give me a follow. Elijah Herbel, at Herbal Essence, is where you follow him. Mark Kraynak back on Twitter someday. And we will catch up. What's on the menu here, Elijah, for postgame? Who do we have?
We've got Mickey first, and we had Casey ready to go. We might be running a little short on time for Casey, but we will for sure get to Mickey here.
Okay. So quick time out. Next hour, we'll spend time with Brandon Vogel from Hail Varsity, get his take on things, and Gary Sharp, the Iron Horse, with us. But a quick time out here, Hail Varsity Weekend Edition, presented by Currency. Mickey Joseph up next.
Now, back with Hail Varsity Radio with Chris Schmidt and Mark Kraynak.
I want to thank our fans who traveled out here to Jersey to support us. Then I'm going to take my hat off to the kids and the coaches. Like I told the kids this whole week, they got themselves prepared. The coaches did their job with the game plan, but they got themselves prepared and ready to come on a short week. It's a great game. We asked them to fight. We asked them to fight. at halftime, and then in full court we asked them to finish. We asked them to finish, and they did.
Questions? Mickey, what didn't you do in the first half that you did in the second half?
We struggled on offense. With the defense, we gave up some plays. We gave up some deep balls early. We had to settle it down and get things together, but we struggled on offense the first half.
How much were you worried about Casey's health at halftime?
Casey's tough. I can tell you, Casey's going to play. If Casey can get that ball out of his hand, he's going to play. Casey was raised by Charles Thompson, a grown man. Remember, he came to Nebraska and did us in a couple of times. So Casey's tough. Casey's going to be to take hits and get up.
How sweet was it to see the players just celebrate like that, to get the reward of a good second half?
Yes, like I told the defense, just, 2 weeks in a row that they shut somebody out the second half, I think, So you're happy for them. You're happy for them. Like I said, they've been beat up for a long time, but now they're feeling the pressure that they know how to win. And like I said, they prepared themselves during the week. They got themselves ready to work. We only had one week, one day, and when we put pads on it, we hit. One day, everything else was in spiders. But they played it to the full quarter, and they were the most physical team.
What's Quentin's status, and then what can you say about Malcolm and Brandon, the way they played in the second half?
But you know what? Next man up. Next man up. We talked to him about that. If you're a backup, you got to prepare like you're a starter. So you take your hat off to Bam and you take your hat off to Malcolm. Because Malcolm started, but he struggled. We took him out for a couple of plays. But Q, I'm going to have to talk to Mark and see, what's the instead of Q's injury.
Oh, Q's hurt?
He was a little banged up. I think it was a groin. So that's why he was out.
What was the mood at halftime in the locker room, and how did you address that mood?
Well, no, we figured we still had it was a 2-score game, and we knew we had to play 4 quarters. We knew coming in here that this team was going to play tough. We knew it, but we had to make them play 4 quarters. So second half, we was really confident that we could come back and win the game.
Mickey, you talk about the belief that the guys have now. Do you feel like that now, because of how important this one was, this could change the outlook that they have on the rest of the season?
Well, I think we take one game at a time with them. Our goal was to be 1-0 this weekend, and now we're 1-0. So we don't want 2 straight. But I'll tell you this. I think they're starting to believe, and they're starting to see it, though. Remember now, they hadn't did this. This is kind of strange for them. But you see that they playing hard, they're playing fast, and they're not giving up. And listen, I called them in the 4th quarter again. It was no doubt there was no doubt in their eyes that they was going to win the game. And it was the same way at halftime. They knew they was going to win the game if they keep fighting. We said it was going to be a street fight, but we said the type of street fight we're in, there's no rounds, there's no time. It's just let's keep swinging. Don't look at the scoreboard. And at the end, you'll come out on top.
Hey, Mickey, Miles Farmer, he's had some ups and downs this season, but he makes that pick. And then can you just speak about that sequence where he gets that big play and then you turn around and go for the end zone right away?
Yes, Miles made a big play. Miles struggled the first couple of weeks. And he struggled with the first couple of weeks, with this scheme. But I stayed on Miles. I called Miles into my office. I stayed on Miles because I know Miles is a good player. I know Miles is a really good player. So, and we need his leadership out there. So I stayed on him, and Fish stayed on him, Billy stayed on him, and he showed up. He showed up today with a big play.
Hey, Mickey, how big was that sequence where Blaze Gunnarsson stopped the touchdown on the block punt, and then your defense held up for a field goal to keep it at 10-0?
That was big. That was big on Blaze's part. He stopped. He saved us 4 points.
Just in that moment to get down 14-0, though.
Yeah, you don't want to do 14-0, you're down 13. But listen, that was a great play by Blaze.
I know you trust Coach Whipple to kind of run the offense and call the plays. Was there a moment in there where you said, are you passing it too much? Or, that 4th down where you guys went empty? Were there any moments like that in the second half?
No. I'm going to let Whipple call his game. Whipple's a veteran. He's been doing this a long time. And what you don't do, you don't question guys, because he had to get him back on track. So I had to let Whipple call his game. I had to do it.
Well, that 4th and 1 that Sam was talking about, what went into that decision that first in the 3rd quarter that you guys didn't have is the empty set. Can you just explain what David Whipple was talking about, why he called that play?
Because we thought we was getting the coverage that for that play. We thought we was going to get that coverage, and we did. Just didn't execute it.
Yeah, getting back to the Farmer interception, and the next play you throw to Trey. You knew that was coming, and did you feel pretty good about that call? And what do you say about Trey making up another big play?
Yes, Trey. We knew Trey was going to be able to run by these corners, and we knew the safety was going to check down on the seam route. So it was a really good route by Trey. And, one thing Trey can do when he sees it, he can go get it, and he made a great catch.
One or two more. What happened to Reimer?
I got to talk to Mark about it. He just told me Luke was out and they had to come in and get X-rays. So I got to talk to Mark.
Kind of feeding off that door. I mean, you were playing a bunch of different guys that
next man up.
Yeah.
I mean, what I'm going to do? I'm going to play with 10? No. If you're a backup or if you're a third guy, you got to get yourself prepared to play, because you're only one play away from getting in the game, and those kids understand that, because we got to put them in there. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm not. But the next guy's got to get in there. I mean, this is big boy football. We got to put the next guy in, and he's on scholarship just like Luke's on scholarship. So he had to go in the game, and I expect him to execute the game plan.
How important is it to get a win when you're not playing in the prettiest type of way?
I mean, it's a great win, because we haven't had many. We don't won 2 straight. We won a road game. So this is big. This is good for the kids and good for the coaches. Like I said, this thing's bigger than me, but it's those coaches and those players that's really that's digging it in.
You sense they were slowing you guys down on offense?
We struggled in the first half. They did.
I mean, Rutgers, that they were kind of slowing the tempo with.
They slowed us down. But Rutgers is a good defense. They until last week, until the week Ohio State, they was top in the country. So they got a really good defense. Shiano was a good defensive-minded coach. So it was a chess match tonight.
You make here, you guys are all alone in first place, at least for a couple hours. How does that feel?
First place is when you end the season, not now. I mean, it's fake first place.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Early to rise with Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Here's Chris Schmidt and Mark Kraynak.
One final time this first hour, Hail Varsity Weekend, presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency, Chris Schmidt, Mark Kraynak, Elijah Herbel. Thanks to Mickey Joseph, his post-game audio right there. Fake first place. It's okay. It's it's still what it looks like right now. You look at ESPN.com, the slate of games. There's Friday off to the side, 14-13 Nebraska over Rutgers. Indiana is to host Michigan. Purdue is at Maryland. Wisconsin and Northwestern, another rock fight. Ohio State is going to clobber Sparty, you would think, based on the tailspin Michigan State's in. Iowa, Illinois. That is going to be
another rock fight.
Another rock fight, but I'll watch. I'm going to watch Iowa, Illinois tonight. And then you got KU and TCU at 11 o'clock with game day down in Lawrence. Mark Kraynak back with us. So I don't care if the Blackshirts are handed out this week, next week, at all during the season. I just like what Bill Bush has done with this football team. There's some questions you saw on Twitter last night, the way the defense has played the last couple of weeks. Is it time? Brady Oltmans is going to make that a point to ask, I think, this week from HailVarsity.com and magazine. He was in Piscataway last night. So it's nice. It's important for the players to earn that. I totally get it. Their effort and their intensity, their preparation, right, has warranted to revisit the discussion. But maybe I'm too grumpy and old, and it's 7:50 this morning. But it's just off to the side for me. Just keep finding a way. That to me is the biggest thing. If you're a Nebraska football fan, that's the thing, man. Last night was pure Big Ten. Mm-hmm. Well, you can't watch. You maybe threw a remote through the TV. You're out of booze. I mean, you go down the list, and then you're just like, man, that was giving birth. But here's the baby. I mean, it works. It works out okay if you're a Nebraska fan. You got the win, man.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah. Schmitty, we're three guys here at 7:50 in the morning. You just made a giving birth analogy. We have no room
That's
to
really
talk.
solid.
No, I'm sure we. I'm sure we don't. I can only imagine, right? Where what was the guy on Twitter last weekend? Where it's college football Saturday, and one of the most insensitive tweets out there where. The guy's like, kickoff's here in a little bit, and this is taking too long. So the guy shows pizza showing up at the hospital while his wife's giving birth.
Oh, God.
It was horrible.
No.
Can't we hurry this thing up? We got kickoff to make.
I'd honestly not even thought about
couch.
Blackshirts lately.
Yeah.
I'd not even thought about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and think about some of those traditions, right? Like, how meaningful is it when it's like you hand out the black shirts and it's a great accomplishment, and then you get trucked for 580 yards the next game, and you're just like, okay, cool, you're a black shirt, part of the fraternity.
Yeah, that's what you want to avoid this week is handing them out this week, and then Monday after Purdue taking them right back.
They're rent to own right now.
If you really think about it, you know what I would do if I was Trev? I would pass legislation for the football program and just say starters get black shirts, and that's it. Stop with the whole taking them away, giving them if they do this, if they do that. Just starters get black shirts. Just keep it simple. I don't know. That's what I would do, but what the heck. Hey, by the way, last two games, 13 tackles for loss.
Yes.
In the last two games compared to 14 the 4 games prior. Last two games, 6 sacks compared to a total of 4. The 4 games prior. So, like, the havoc plays are increasing significantly and have over the past couple of weeks.
Well, and that was key. I mean, what did Rutgers want to do? They wanted to get downhill. They wanted to keep it in third and manageable. And Rutgers did have their share of third or fourth and shorts, right? More so third and shorts. But Nebraska would stiffen up. I mean, there was a lot of 2nd and 8, 2nd and 7s because the defense stiffened after that first drive. And, Noah Vedrolls finished 3 of 10 and dinged his thumb. They went up top, picked on the young guy early, but Nebraska responded, found a way.
You heard it from
Hour
Schmitty.
1. Go ahead.
The D got stiff last night. You heard it from Schmitty.
Oh.
They did. They dare I say, bowed up.
The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now roll tide.
And Mark Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Back with you, it's Hour 2. It's the weekend edition at Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Artez has chimed in. Brennan has said good morning. Jeff has said hello. Mark Kraynak, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We welcome in Brandon Vogel, not in his football office, but the backdrop of a beautiful painting. And you can look at last night's ball game and interpret a lot of things. But, man, a win is a win. Vogues, thanks for joining us this morning. How are you?
Doing well. I'm on solo dad duty, so I apologize for any noises we may hear throughout this radio spot.
No, you're good.
It sounded like you're getting some remodeling done or something.
No, that's banging the water cup because it's not quite
No,
full
I was going to say it sounded like
yeah.
you have John Bonham as a house guest.
Yeah.
No, we did get reports of Chris Schmidt doing the same thing at the Hail Varsity Club last night when his beer ran out.
I was composed and behaved. There's a still
Elijah
pic.
pacified him, though.
You sit in the high chair and stay over there.
That's actually
Yes,
a great
sir.
idea. Like, why would you not have adult high chairs to watch football games? Just a whole row of them. That could be a lot of fun.
That's a good idea, and then you can get hosed off afterwards.
Welcome. Put me in touch with the Hail Varsity Club GM. I got other ideas too.
We will do that. managing editor with HailVarsity.com and magazine, Brandon Vogel, with us at Brandon L. Vogel. Vogues, gritty, tough, some words that we used last night, in a one-word synopsis of the game. 14-13, Nebraska wins, 2-1 in Big Ten play. What's a word that comes to mind for you with Nebraska? We'll start there. What'd you think last night?
Well, it looked like there's about 1 point separating Nebraska and Rutgers. And in my post-game column, I kind of took that track of, and it's much better to be +1 than -1. At halftime when it's 13-0, Nebraska's offense, which had been, pretty clearly, I think, good through the season to this point, was just getting stonewalled, particularly in the run game, and they couldn't protect Casey Thompson enough to get the passing game going. Looked pretty rough, and it was, in the past, in a more normal time for Nebraska, it's a catastrophe. And I'm sitting there wondering, what do you even say about this? Because, all of the context around Nebraska football is totally different now. Ton of credit to them. They found a way to pull it out. They kind of kept at it. So I guess the one word might be perseverance. And it's a welcome sight to see because it's been in short supply at Nebraska over the past couple of seasons.
Brandon Vogel is with us on Hail Varsity Radio, and it's really it's a different team in the second half. Last 2 weeks, right? I think you throw the Oklahoma game out just because of maybe the talent discrepancy, and then the situation surrounding that game, and because it's more convenient for this discussion. But you look at the last 2 weeks, a couple Big Ten opponents that are low to mid, I guess, in the conference. You've pitched a shutout both second halves. Third down conversion rate has been fantastic. Tackles for loss way up. Sacks way up. Turnovers up. What do you think it is that Bill Busch has been able to do with this defense? And is that something, after 2 games, that we feel confident enough in saying, you know what, that's something that you can probably depend on moving forward?
Yeah, I think, simplify is the word that keeps getting used, and it might be the wrong one. I'm thinking back to that Oklahoma game where Urban Meyer had to step in to the booth for the second half. And a comment that I haven't been able to forget was him talking about just how simple kind of Nebraska's defensive scheme was in terms of what they were choosing to run. I think the simplicity here has been in dialing back maybe the language. I know they didn't change the language, but just getting everyone on the same page. And, the thing that stands out about last night is you did that with a ton of kind of movement at corner in terms of who was in there. So whatever, I think that's the big thing, is just getting everybody on the same page in a way that it didn't feel through the first 4 games. So it's worked. It's worked against 2 offenses that, are going to be at the bottom, towards the bottom of the Big Ten. Fair enough. But you look at the rest of the schedule, Indiana or Illinois, you worry about that run game. Purdue, you worry about that pass game. But Nebraska doesn't have to play Ohio State. It does have to play Michigan. It's not like this is a conference of just elite offenses up and down the conference.
Brandon Vogel's with us here on a Saturday morning edition of Hail Varsity Radio. And Brandon, you mentioned the fact that Nebraska claimed to be simplifying their defense. And I think that is true in terms of the language and whatnot. But last night I saw some pretty creative blitzes from Bill Busch, especially in the second half. And I think of one in particular, that final defensive play where Malcolm Hartzog gets the pick, and you watch, Caleb Tanner is actually lined up as a linebacker, like a true linebacker, and he's almost used like the Cowboys use Micah Parsons, where he comes darting through, takes out the left guard, the left tackle, and it frees up Garrett Nelson to get some pressure on the quarterback and enforce that errant throw. And I think that's the perfect representation of this defense, is not necessarily that it's simple, but the fact that it's allowing them to play freely, where Caleb Tanner, I mean, that's almost his bread and butter, is just go out there and run as fast as you can at a left guard, knock him 3 yards in the defensive backfield, knock him into a left tackle, and free up Garrett Nelson. Not that that's a simple blitz by any means, but this Bill Busch defense is allowing the defense to play more freely than they were in weeks 1 through 3.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Maybe Nebraska's not throwing a ton more exotic coverages than they were in the past, but if you're going to dial things down, even from where they were at, if that's what's happened, you gotta dial up the aggressiveness, and that's a mindset. That's also game planning and choices in terms of how you blitz and when you choose to send extra rushers, and that's been a pretty big change. So I guess if Nebraska isn't the most kind of the fanciest team out there in terms of what it's going to throw at you coverage wise, still. The big difference might be, well, you got a little bit of a free roll here, so you might as well be aggressive. And I think that's what we're seeing these past 2 games.
Brendan Vogel's with us here on Hail Varsity Weekend. The German wants to say hi to you, Vogue. Sorry about that.
He's talking about a dog. It's a German Shepherd. I always feel like I have to clarify that.
That didn't translate well to people who are not watching the stream.
We're on the stream, ESPN Lincoln Facebook, ESPN Lincoln Twitter, and the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed.
Why don't want people to think that it's someone named Gretchen walking around that's,
It's Gertrude.
Yeah.
No, just why not?
See, and Junior thought that was pretty good. Look, a big-eared puppy. So, with Nebraska, what did last night say to you moving forward about Nebraska's offense? Are you concerned about the offense moving forward, to go big picture for a moment, or is it just that's Rutgers, they're pretty decent, and the offense will get better in some areas? Bogues, you have guys that are going to will themselves to make plays. That's the equalizer. That's a little bit more comforting. If you're Nebraska, you can find Palmer. You've got Thompson, and then there is Grant to harm people on the sideline. But what's your edict on the offense right now, Bud? With you need 3 to get to a bowl game, and then beyond is a little gravy here for potential postseason.
Yeah, it's tough for me to not feel like maybe the offense isn't quite as strong as I thought it had looked going into that game, and particularly in the run game. Like, I was joking with our staff on our in-game chat that if Anthony Grant makes 1,000 yards this year, it might be one of the greatest physical achievements in human history. Because man, there's not a lot to work with on that front, and that's going to be a problem because if we can look at these kind of Big Ten offenses coming up on Nebraska's schedule and say, they kind of have their positive traits. Look at the defenses, and it's what you've come to expect in the Big Ten. There's not going to be an easy out there. And Indiana, in its own way, particularly in the run game, I think, wasn't an easy out. And Rutgers is pretty solid all around. Really like their secondary, which was pretty banged up as well going into last night, and got more banged up during the game. So it's tough. Nebraska, if it's gonna go on a run that's somewhat beyond even just reaching bowl eligibility, it's got to find a way to run the football, and it's got to find a way to protect the passer, because you look at between Grant, Thompson, and Palmer, and even Marcus Washington, like they basically downloaded a new offensive skill position pack. And that part of it's worked. It's just you haven't gotten the play on the line.
Brandon Vogel is with us on Hail Varsity Radio, and so is his son, who is not being cooperative with the radio show, but that's okay because he is very young.
See, he's smiling.
And now he's looking into the screen like, what is going on?
Who are these goons on the screen?
He's like, it's pretty obvious, guys. This team's not very good. Why are you freaking out? Like, why are you getting up so early talking about this?
Feed me more Cheerios, damn it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. At this point, too, they've tried different, and shame on me for not noticing this, by the way. They did go with Hunter Anthony last night over Bryce Benhart. I mentioned in the beginning of the show that, hey, maybe they should look at that. They did. Benhart only – so whenever I was noticing the offensive line were just the 7 snaps that Benhart actually played. So they're trying different things on the offensive line. Not to play offensive coordinator on the radio, but one thing you're not seeing as much, I don't think, is like play action, misdirection, creativity in the run game, because I feel like you have – at this point – it's pretty clear you don't have Outland Trophy winners on the offensive line. You just don't. You can't protect well. Thompson was pressured a lot last night. He's under duress on straight dropbacks. Is it as simple as, hey, look, get more creative in the run game, do more play action. You have to figure out a way to negate the fact that you just cannot pass protect well, and you cannot run block super well. Time to get creative?
Yeah, well, I wish Nebraska was a little less creative on a specific 3rd and 1 last night in the run game, but they survived that. There was the drive, and I don't have the chart in front of me, but the one that started with basically kind of a swing/screen to Vogelek. And it was at that moment where I was like, okay, Nebraska can't line up and run the football. It's struggling to drop back and pass. And I think that's the kind of creativity they might have to turn to a little bit more often early, because, Trey Palmer has proven, like, with his speed, that he's a pretty dangerous deep threat. And in the past, on those first drives, we've seen Nebraska, get those shots early, and Rutgers, I think, was ready for those. So Nebraska had to loosen them up, and you couldn't do it through the run game. So maybe it's a little bit more short passing. Maybe it's a little bit more horizontal passing. It's the nice thing about Whipple is, he's probably run a little bit of everything over his time. So I think Nebraska will have some time to figure it out, but you look at what Purdue did against Minnesota last week, and we'll see what the Boilermakers do this week against a pretty good Maryland team. That's a good defense too. I mean, you go to Minneapolis and hold a team to 10 points. Like, this isn't the Purdue of old where you just worry about defending the pass.
Brandon Vogel's with us here, a Saturday morning edition of Hail Varsity Radio, and Mark got into it a little bit with the offensive line with Hunter Anthony stepping up, and that was expected to be a rotation, but it's that next man up mentality, Vogues. And I want to get your take on a guy on defense that embodied that next man up mentality last night. That was Brandon Bam Moore. I don't think anyone in Nebraska had money on Brandon Moore to have an interception last night. If you did, enjoy your newfound wealth, because that was just completely unexpected to see Brandon Moore on the field. A walk-on, but technically a transfer, just not enough scholarships for him, coming from UCF. I want to get your take on his performance last night, stepping up in a big spot. I don't think anyone was expecting to see him, and he performed in a big way last night.
Yeah, he did. And you're happy for a guy like that who's moved around a bunch and had some unique circumstances. He kind of arrived at Nebraska just out of thin air, and you had a little bit of a free roll with him. He saw a handful of snaps leading up to this game, and they were noticeable for the wrong reasons, I guess. But at the point where he got that interception, I think you saw kind of the value of a guy like that. He's been at Florida State. He's been at Central Florida. You're not throwing another true freshman in there. And when you needed to spell Hartzog, because Rutgers was picking on him and having success doing it. You had a guy like that who's been around some big time football, and he showed up. That's another thing that gets maybe not as much attention as simplifying or playing free or winning close games under Mickey, is kind of that clean slate for everyone, but also a willingness to put guys in. I mean, the guys are on the roster for a reason, and they may not be at the top of the depth chart for a pretty good reason, but it's worth finding out sometimes, because a guy like this might surprise you and make one of the plays that saves the game.
Well, the quote from Mickey last night, which kind of put a smile on my face, was, yeah, that guy's on scholarship too. And I think he was talking about the linebacker position with Luke Reimer going down, but I just loved that quote of, Yeah, he's on scholarship too, and he's got to go out there and perform. We're not expecting any less just because he's a backup.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, probably be an off-season project, but going back and looking at the participation reports for Nebraska over the past 4 years, this is something that always kind of jumped out to me after each game, but wasn't very long for a team that carries 150 players. And that seems to be changing a little bit too, and probably will as you get banged up even more through just rough and tumble Big Ten play.
Vogues, what does Nebraska have in Casey Thompson?
They gotta, I've been really impressed with what he's done. Is he a perfect quarterback? Is there such thing as a perfect quarterback? Who knows? But he's a guy where I think if Nebraska were in a different position, if the lines were stronger, if they were a little bit deeper, you could win everything you need to win with him. The effort he shows to play through injuries, minor injuries, I think at this point, thankfully, for him is really, really impressive. The guy just keeps getting up, and it would be easy not to in such a strange set of circumstances such as this.
Brandon Vogel with us, Hail Varsity Radio. So, you got today, you got Nebraska with kind of an off week. What a weird year, by the way, just schedule-wise, right? You got another Friday game. I mean, Iowa's always a Friday, but, it's the end of the season. But now you get this extra day to prepare. If you're Nebraska, Brandon, what are the things that you are working on the most in advance of facing a Purdue team that's pretty good against the run and has kind of their patented passing attack with a featured wide receiver in Charlie Jones?
Yeah, I think the big thing there is, and not that dissimilar from Whipple at Pitt with Jordan Addison, and now with Palmer. If Purdue knows they've got a receiver, they're going to get them the ball as much as possible. So defensively, I think that becomes a really big piece. You got to figure out a way. You got to get that secondary a little bit healthy. But figure out how you're going to cover a wide receiver like that. And Aiden O'Connell's a little bit banged up. I expect him to, I guess we'll see what happens today. It's still weird that Nebraska's one of the only teams that's played, and there's more information to come. But we'll see what happens there. You'd like to think Nebraska can find 3 or 4 run plays that it feels it can have some success with, specifically for Purdue. That said, it feels like a coin flip at best on that. So I think you dig into what Purdue likes to do coverage wise, dial up the pass plays that you think can exploit that. And that's probably Nebraska's path going into next week at West Lafayette.
Vogues, what worked last night, and we were touching on it with Whipple and the controlled passing attack, right? He can after about the second series, Nebraska did more checkdowns to Grant. You have the ability to find Brewington or Vokalek, the old little just quick out in the flat that's 3 that turns into 7, right? So it's a second and short if you're throwing on first down. They started moving Casey, not every play, but a few times in the pocket. You've seen that. Once things didn't get, that's probably page 2, right? They'll turn the page, they'll go to page 2, and here's some adjustments they'll do. They have the ability, I think, to dink and dunk, and then still kill you with a deep play to Palmer, all right, or Washington, or Martin, or so they have some explosive plays, but if you can't just line up and get 5, Nebraska can make adjustments. I was surprised that they went so aggressive early against Rutgers.
Yeah, I was a little bit too. It's worked, particularly with those opening, however long Nebraska's opening game scripts are. They've kind of gotten exactly what they wanted, and that's good game planning, and tip your hat to the coaching staff there. Last night was, Nebraska was aggressive in strange times to me.
Yes.
You talk about the reverse with Palmer on a 3rd and 1. You had the double or the reverse that, had a pass option on it for Alante Brown, which seemed strange. Yet, and I'll have to go back and look, because over the past 2 games, I feel like it seems like every time Nebraska ends up in like a 2nd and 10 or just 2nd and long, they're going to run the football. And that's a disturbing thing for me, the lack of success, because those are passing downs. Those are downs where the defense is saying, look, if you're going to run the ball, we'll give you 6 yards and get to 3rd down. And Nebraska's not getting 6 yards on those runs. So it's a big puzzle in terms of the run game. And I think they have enough in terms of receivers and complexity in the passing game that might just be how they try to patch this for the remaining 6 games.
Yeah, they can get you on a crosser, on a check down, or go over the top. I mean, that's how they've won 3 ball games, and they've gotten to 3-3. Brandon Vogel with us. Vogues, what's coming up from you and Hale Varsity here this weekend?
Yeah, so we got all of our stuff out from last night's game. I know a lot of people probably didn't spend last night reading the entire internet, so all of that stuff's back out there. We'll have volleyball again this weekend, and then getting to work on we've been to work, but the October issue goes to print a week from this coming Monday. So we'll have new print coming your way shortly.
Folks, appreciate you jumping on. Give Junior a fist bump. Tell him there's more college football, and to hunker in for some Big 12 today.
I will do that. I don't know if he's prepared for like the 14 hours of just watching football that I like to employ.
Have you had the chance to talk to him and have that hard conversation? The fact that both Kansas and TCU are 5-0. That's a tough conversation.
Game days in Lawrence.
I'll try to tell him the full 4-hour story of why this is such a momentous Saturday in Lawrence. So.
Vogues, be good. Take care. Best to you and your fam. All right, there he is, Brandon Vogel, with us here on Hale Varsity Weekend, presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. The German Shepherd has finally settled down. You ever watch the movie Step Brothers, Kraynak or Elijah?
It's been a little bit, but yeah.
It's a classic. I've obviously seen
it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the German Shepherd that's the neighbor's dog, the seeing eye dog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's how Gertie acts. Like, she's just doesn't mind. She's everywhere. She thinks she's a lap dog. She's awesome, but she loves being part of the Saturday shows when we do it from the kitchen island. Yeah. So we are going to check in with the Iron Horse. Gary Sharp will join us. We'll wind down a weekend edition at Hale Varsity, presented by Currency.
Glad to have you back.
Yes, sir. You heard me right.
Here are the guys, Schmidt and Kraynak.
Well, Hector, here's the game plan. You're going to bring us 2 absolute martinis. You know how I like them, straight up. And then precisely 7.5 minutes after that, you're going to bring us 2 more. Then 2 more after that every 5 minutes until one of us passes out.
Excellent strategy, sir.
Back with you, it's Weekend Edition. It's Hale Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kraynak, Elijah Herbel, as things are getting rocking down in Rock Chalk Land. Some footage and some scenes on social media with the pate that is going on in the hills down in Lawrence with TCU and Kansas. Nebraska can smile. They have back-to-back wins for the first time in forever. I think what you were doing back in 2018, that was pre-pandemic. That was year 1 of the Frost era. And Nebraska right now in the fake first place role, as Mickey put it. But we welcome in the Iron Horse with us, Gary Sharp with us this weekend edition. Sharpie, good morning. Man, we'll continue the theme. 1 word to describe last night.
Resilient.
Okay. Good word. At what point did you feel comfortable watching that, or did you?
When Greg Schiano showed off his game management skills, I thought there's no way that I don't think anybody was feeling secure until that game ended. But that game last night, one team had to win and one team had to lose, and you wake up today and you're just really, really glad that you won that football game, because the team that lost is going, man, that was inexcusable. But, Nebraska threw everything against a team that is, living in the same neighborhood that they are in the Big Ten. Nebraska found a way to win last night, and that's all that matters, is that when the game was over, Nebraska had one more point than Rutgers.
Gary Sharp with us on the Hail Varsity Radio. So, we're 3 weeks into Mickey Joseph taking over and Bill Busch taking over defensively. What is an area of strength that you think Nebraska can carry forward, and what is a concern just based on this overall new-look team with new voices?
Well, I'll go with my concern first. My concern is now the schedule ramps up, where you've won 2 games where Vegas said you're supposed to win. And the next step will be win a game when people say that you're not supposed to win. And that's probably going to come next Saturday, because from here on out, more than likely, Nebraska is going to be an underdog. Maybe they're a pick-em in a game down the road. That would be my concern, is you buy too much into the last 2 weeks to go, okay, all of a sudden everything's fixed. Because as we saw last night, Nebraska still has some personnel issues that they're not going to be able to overcome with the addition of Mickey Joseph and the elevation of Bill Busch in their current roles. Those things are pretty prevalent, especially along the offensive line. Nobody's walking through the door in a Superman cape to cure everything. What I do think is portable, and it has a lot to do with defense, is guys feel better about themselves. They are putting players in a better position to succeed. And I think guys feel more comfortable playing defense, that they have their feet on the ground, they're aligned correctly, and they trust Bill Busch to put them in a spot that they can be successful. And I think that can carry you away on that side of the ball, because as tough as Casey Thompson is, as tough as Anthony Grant is, as clutch as Trey Palmer is, if that defense doesn't keep Nebraska in the game against a bad offensive team, which all of a sudden hit you for 13, man, Nebraska has no shot to come back. So I think the defense is one to watch moving forward, and it's really pretty remarkable, because those guys to a man were way down. I mean, look at particular guys. Luke Reimer, we didn't even recognize him first couple of weeks of the season. Luke Reimer looks completely different the last couple of weeks. So I think that's a positive that I could take to West Lafayette, I could bring back to Lincoln at the end of the month, and maybe move it into November as well.
Gary, I want to get your reaction to stand by the defense that stands out in my memory as giving them some life early in that game last night, and that was after the block punt. We had Bill Busch earlier in the week say, if you're a team that goes and blocks a punt 90% of the time, you're going to win that football game. And Rutgers, they're part of the 10% that did not go and win a football game after blocking a punt, and that's a big testament to what the defense did after Rutgers went and blocked that punt. They made a stand inside their own 10-yard line, forced Rutgers to kick a field goal, and that looms large in a game whenever Nebraska only goes and wins by 1 point. And I think it gave the defense some life moving forward and kind of showed them, you know what, we are in this game. We can keep this team hanging around, and we're in the fight. I want to get your reaction to that series and how the defense just responded to getting punched in the mouth last night.
And that's a great point, Elijah. And I know what you guys have been talking about this morning. That drive, remember, Nebraska didn't start off great offensively. I mean, I like Rutgers' first drive, the way they had that built up. I mean, that was scripted pretty well. But then Nebraska started to have the familiar theme of missed tackles. And that 4-yard, what should have been a 4-yard run, all of a sudden is a 43-yard run. But with that in that drive, that's the drive that you're just speaking of, that Nebraska holds them to a field goal, and that was a win for the defense. And I think when I go back to the word, Schmidt, you asked, resilient, I think that's what we've seen the defense do. You know, they bowed up and they found a way when they could crumble that they say, not today. And, you know, Rutgers is not very good offensively. I mean, I don't want to go over the top on that victory. This is a great victory for the program because of where they were and what they're trying to accomplish and what things they're showing you the last 2 weeks that they haven't. But that was an offense that you cannot let have breath because they're not very good. And I thought the defense on that drive, the whole You're like, phew, oh, boy, we got through that. We still have a chance. And that's basically the whole night, is the defense gave Nebraska a chance to stay in the game and then to make plays to win a game in the fourth quarter.
Gary Sharp with us, weekend edition. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. Gary, what do you do moving forward, to your point about some of the limitations on offense? You have some strengths, you have some options, got some playmakers, but moving forward here against better competition, what do you lean on if you're Whipple?
Well, if I'm not Mark Whipple, I'm a health insurance agent. I'm making sure I got all my policies up to. He's tough. I mean, he took some hits last night. Some of it was getting held on, but they got to figure out the offensive line and what they do well and what they don't do well, because there are times where we've seen it as where one guy will have it was become left guard, center. I mean, there were against defense that is good, but you're going to face better defense along the way. That's an area of concern, and I don't know if you can escape it. It's something all of us have been talking about since the spring. It's not a
Elijah, let's try and reconnect with Gary. All right, bud. We'll reset with Gary here in just a moment. Little sketchy cell service, but I'm anxious to get his take, Kraynak, with, okay, you can throw a go route to Palmer. You did it to put away Indiana. You can find Vogelek on a slant when you flex him out on 3rd and 7 to keep that critical clock-burning drive done. You can pop pass to Vogelek. You can get Palmer on the sudden change after another interception, right after that second interception for Nebraska last night, 27 yards, bang, you take the lead, 14-13. So I don't want to make it sound like Nebraska does not have any options, but man, it's kind of all or nothing, right, with getting that big play to get into the end zone. And who knows if Nebraska will be able to run better as the schedule gets tougher. Back to Gary Sharp. Sharpie, we had to reset with you, bud. We lost you for a moment. But moving forward here, where can you lean and get some consistency with Nebraska offensively?
Well, I think you say, okay, that offensive line, what do they do well? And let's focus on that, and let's try and scheme a little bit away from our weaknesses. I think that's the only thing you can do with the offensive line.
I think there's symbolism going on here, too, by the way. Ever since we started talking about the patchy offensive line, we got a patchy connection with Gary. So, it makes, I guess it stands to reason. Gary, if you're still with us and can hear us, there's also a couple trends that have emerged recently with Nebraska and this whole year. So one, in the red zone, Nebraska's been really good this year offensively. Mm-hmm. They've gotten to the red zone 18 times. They've scored 15 touchdowns. Really solid, right? Like that is really good conversion. And then the other thing that's emerged trend-wise, at least the past couple of weeks, is in the second half, the defense has clamped down. They haven't allowed a point, and they also haven't allowed hardly any third down conversions either. Are those things that you think are going to be hallmarks and features of Nebraska going forward the rest of the year, or are those aberrations against maybe some subpar opponents?
Well, I think on the red zone, hopefully guys have you. The red zone, you're right, Mark. Nebraska's been really
well, I think what Gary was trying to say there is,
great question, Mark.
Yeah,
he left him at a loss for words.
I stumped him. him. That's how it goes. No, yeah. Look, those are things that just bear watching. And now the Purdue team coming in. The Purdue team that you're going to watch next week, pretty solid. They always feature a receiver, right? That's just what they've done.
They've got somebody or two.
Yeah, whether it was Moore, David Bell, now it's Charlie Jones. He's their featured guy. He hasn't played all that well the last 2 weeks. He hasn't produced quite to what he was doing. I mean, he had 3 straight 100-yard games to start the year. He hasn't cracked 100. He didn't crack 100 in the last 2. So you'll see what he's capable of doing moving forward. And then when you look at who Nebraska is going to have isolated on him, Nebraska's playing a lot of man-to-man, and they're playing up too. Their corners are playing not exclusively, but they're doing it with much more frequency than I think they were before. And they're doing it with, a guy like Malcolm Hartzog, who now has a total of, 8 quarters under his belt and was playing high school ball last year. So that, that particular matchup is a little bit concerning because I don't think Rutgers had a guy that could consistently get you, and Indiana had its top 2 guys out. So what is Nebraska going to do against a top-flight wide receiver?
Well, you fear that they're just going to get carved up and dominated because it's been problematic, at least for a couple of drives against Indiana with their B team. And Rutgers, they didn't have any quarterbacks that could throw the football. And they got hit for 3 monster gash plays that led to 10 of the 13 points. So on its face right now, it looks like it could get ugly for Nebraska in the secondary. But just when you're ready to go that route, they kind of surprise you with either an adjustment or a response. The complementary football part is you got good defense, you got just enough offense in the second half last night. You got enough offense and defense and special teams to beat Indiana. I think moving forward, the trend has been all 3 phases at one point pitch in to help deliver Nebraska a win. You need that trend to continue. It isn't going to continue every ball game, but I think the kids will get coached up enough to continue to be in it. I think Nebraska will figure out a way to scrap. Mark is the best way to put it. Doesn't mean they'll win, but I don't think it's going to be a situation where there's just no answer for Nebraska in the secondary to stop somebody. Bush and company will figure out the opponent's best guy and try and limit, right? You had Rutgers do the same thing on Palmer last night. Palmer ended up making some super big-time plays, but it was more of a, the option was Washington, at least in Nebraska's passing game early last night. So that's a fair concern. And on its face right now, it looks like Nebraska's in some deep water with their personnel and future matchups. But Nebraska's found a way so far.
Yeah, and to your point about finding a way, last night when the secondary needed some help, the pass rush stepped up.
Yes.
And was getting home, creating some havoc in the backfield. And now the quarterback is feeling rushed back there and is ending up making some poor decisions. And that led to, I think, 2 of the 3 interceptions was the fact that, the pass rush is getting home, and he's got to get the ball out. And you could see the same thing for Rutgers defense last night, too. One of those interceptions by Casey was forced by a pass rush. So while there is inexperience on the back end, it's not like you're hung out to dry just because you're inexperienced back there. When Nebraska needed help, they had some backup corners in there. The pass rush was getting home. They were dialing up some creative blitzes. It was letting guys like Garrett Nelson, O'Shawn Mathis get hits on the quarterback, and that helped that secondary out. So it's not like, well, Nebraska's secondary is inexperienced, and you got an injury concern with Quentin Newsom, so it means bad things against Purdue. There's just other ways you have to go attack an offense in order to shut down a passing attack, and it starts with your front 7.
Guys, they're playing confident, they're playing better, and the thing is they'll be able to build off of the last 2 weeks.
And the big change is the fact that when one area of the game is down, you talk about the secondary, another area is stepping up, the pass rusher. When the offense is down, the defense is stepping up and picking up. Complementary football, to your point, Schmidt, that's a big change to what we've seen the past couple seasons.
Well, here's another big change. Look, the way the game started last night was as poor of a start as you've seen from Nebraska in a while, right? Like that, it looked really bad early. I mean, it looked, wow, Nebraska is unprepared and holy crap, this is going to get ugly. That's what it looked like. That's what it felt like. Right?
I felt shades of 2019 Minnesota in the first two drives of that game.
It looked bad. I mean, Nebraska looked outclassed. They looked like they weren't ready. They didn't seem motivated. And I think in the past, that's the way that game continues.
Yes.
What's interesting now is that the team kind of kept coming. They kept fighting, right? And they ended up pulling out the W. And that in and of itself, I think mentality-wise, you can see an improvement so far. How far will that carry you halfway through the season? I guess we'll find out.
Hey, good stuff this morning. Thanks for checking in the weekend edition with Hail Varsity Radio. We're back Monday and ready for Purdue week. We'll spend time with Charlie McBride and Eric Warfield. Kraynak, enjoy your football Saturday.
You as well, sir. All right.
Elijah, appreciate you. We're back Monday at 4 on Hail Varsity. Thanks.